Starting first with the first panel session, ladies and gentlemen, on a fantastic topic on conversational artificial intelligence, revolutionizing the customer experience. And before I invite the experts panel on stage, I would like to give you a brief about the pointers of discussion the panel is going to discuss. So we'll be having discussions on building the intelligent bank with advanced AI and data analytics, how an onboard demand services have increased the need of rapid insurance experiences and banking insurances, how leading insurers and bankers are delighting their customers with voice AI, AI and automation are revolutionizing the customer experience domain in banks, and many more. I'm obviously not a subject matter expert, so I leave the floor to our expert panel members. So please help me welcome with a big round of applause our panel members in the order of the sequence. I would like to call on stage first Mr. Kashinath Hariharan, Head Transaction Banking Payments, Cash Management and Digital Innovation, ICICI Bank. Kashinath ji, welcome to the panel. We are delighted to have you, sir. Please have your seat, sir. Joining Kashinath ji, we have Sunilkumar, Chief Customer Officer from Federal Bank. A big round of applause for Sunil ji. Sunil ji, welcome to the panel. Delighted to have you, sir. Please take your seat, sir. Joining them, we have Mr. Tejas Maniar, Chief Digital Officer, Fino Payments Bank. A big round of applause for Tejas. Tejas, welcome to the panel and welcome to the dais. And now I would like to call on stage the moderator of the panel, Mr. Abiesh, Head Customer Service Quality, ESAF Small Finance Bank. Abiesh, welcome to the panel. Delighted to have you, and please take your seat, gentlemen. So Abiesh, all over to you. And it's going to be a fantastic panel session ahead. Captain of the ship, looking forward to a great session, Abiesh.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So today we are privileged to have here on the first panel discussion of the day, conversational AI, how it revolutionized the customer experience. So I believe we all know how the technology has changed the banking phase from a personal face-to-face interaction with a local service provider in a branch to an impersonal and technology-driven, system-driven transactions and query handling. So the way the technology has been improving and changing the banking is really phenomenal. And at this juncture, when we are discussing about the conversational AI, as you know, the conversational AI is a set of technologies behind automated messages and speech-enabled the ways in which speech are like human interactions, how the machine is handling, the way in which the communication between a human and a computer in banking. In short, it is like the communication channel is changing from what was in the past. And it is mostly, I would say it is mostly, rather than the banks pulling, it is the customers who are pushing, the changing attitude of the customers, changing demands of the customers from the experience they are getting from the other maybe services, day-to-day services, like whether it be e-com services or anywhere. The customers are expecting the same kind of experience they want to have in the banking also. So at this juncture, when we are discussing about the conversational AI, may I get into the topic wherein I would request Mr. Sunil. He is an expert in banking as well as regulation. So, sir, I would like to know how the customer experience is being changed by AI. What do you think in the next 10 years? How is it going to change?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Abiesh, and very warm and good morning to all of you. Before starting the client experience, client expectations changing within next 10 years, let us set the background to that extent, how the banking and the customer interaction were transforming over the past years. You all remembering that 20 years back also, the customers walk into the brick and mortar branches of the banks and requesting for services. Then it transformed. Banks were sending their agents through direct sales agents, service providers and all to the customers, and banks were reaching out to the customers. Then the next stage started is that from the banking side to reach out to the customers beyond the agents. That is where the digitization process also started. Through electronic media, social networking and all, we started to actually inform the customers of various banking products and all those things. Parallelly, two major regulatory changes transformed the entire thing in the banking service. Number one is the Aadhaar of the UDAI. The reason being, the identity of the Indian customer has been recognized in a very, very structured way. That is what the Aadhaar document has created. The second thing happened is from the RBI side, and all the banks joined in the NPCI. They revolutionized the payment system happening in the banking area. So the transfer of funds have all moved very faster, and whether it is NEFT, RTGS, UPI, or whatever mechanism is there, these two changes transformed the banking and brought a lot of digital opportunities to the banking to that extent. Now, when COVID happened, still what happened was that the banks were interacting with the customer, you are meeting the branch manager, branch officials in certain things, but generally the payments related thing can be digitized. Some amount of unsecured loans can be digitized, it can be given. Liability products, particularly the deposit accounts, all those things can be done through a digital mode after all this transformation. But COVID brought another scene. The scene is, there is a clear-cut bamboo curtain or an iron curtain between the customer and the banker. No longer we can see the customer physically. That was the challenge. Bankers were restricted at their home or their office. Customers were restricted at their residence. So that is where the digitization took in a different space. How far the products can be completely digitized and without having a physical face-to-face, in a virtual mode, things can be moved forward. And one more thing I would like to provide. Earlier, customers were choosing the banking product. Subsequently, bankers were reaching out and telling out, these are my products and all. Now, with this background, when we look at next 10 years, what is going to happen? As far as customers are concerned, there are three mantras. Number one, ease of doing transaction. That is what all the banks and fintechs joined here are trying to achieve. Ease of doing the transaction. That is what the first thing customer is looking into. The second thing customer is looking into, how much information is being shared and what information is required. That is where it has moved from document to data. The third part, definitely I will touch upon this document, because that is where it is coming up. Presently, the payments can be done based on data. Your liability products can be done through the data, and even the unsecured lending. When you come to a secured lending to that extent, there the documents plays a big role. So these are the three major areas now when the bankers and fintechs are concentrating to provide ease of providing the transaction, speed of providing the transaction, and the accuracy of the transaction. That is what the AI, data analytics, digitization, everything has brought into the system. Now, with this background, let us look into what customer would require in the next 10 years. Definitely these three fundamentals he want. Now the first part, what the customer would like in next 10 years to happen. Each bank is giving multiple products, but customer wants to have multiple products, but at the same time, most price effective product. Right now, the challenge what customer is facing is that each bank will have his product and it will have a pricing. Though there is an intercompetition, the pricing is coming down or going up because of the situation, but the comparison has to be done by the customer. So what I perceive is that is what either the bankers or the fintechs are going to do, is to create that marketplace. In a digital platform environment, customer comes and he puts in what's his requirement. Definitely the bank's program can pick that and give him an offer. Right now, as far as the corporates are concerned, it is happening because they all have these platforms and they put what is the requirement. I have an LC requirement, I have a guarantee requirement, a lending requirement, all the banks are bidding. It may not go to that extent as far as the retail customer segment is concerned, but definitely in the marketplace, all the product, because customers are going to choose the right product, what he wants, and he wants all the information related to that product, and he needs to compare with other banks what is happening. So when this happening, when this marketplace is happening, the most important thing is going to happen is there will be pricing aberration will be reduced to a great extent. Still there could be a pricing difference because look at the way a deposit only 5 lakh rupees will be guaranteed by the central bank mechanism. If it goes beyond, bankers can offer an insurance protection to it, but then there will be a different cost. But the fundamental pricing of interest rate for a deposit, for an unsecured loan, all those things are going to be standardized and the bankers are going to take it. That is where the Competition Act and all are going to play, because bankers would not be in a position to actually form a cartel or to take a decision to that extent. So the market pricing aberration will come down to a great extent, and that would be the biggest customer experience going to happen. Now the second thing, information. Of course, I would see in the first part itself, there could be some asymmetry because bigger banks or who are more in the technology may be able to provide a lot of things, but then essentially that is what I'm saying, the marketplace will determine all players a level playing field. Now coming to the second aspect of information, what the customers like, customer would like to give the minimum information and get the maximum benefit, whereas banks want maximum information and maximum products to be offered to the customer. So there are also going to be an asymmetry to that extent, because an intelligent customer will always decide, I will give minimum information, though it is a big challenge in the present context in India, because people are very loose with the information, but the Privacy Act and the data protection regulatory environment is going to change. The customer education will happen and customers will be more conscious. Today what is happening, if you go to any shop, if he is asking some details of your phone number, you will give the phone numbers and the date of birth of all your family, your parents, your in-laws and everything you will be sharing. So that there is no that much rigor as what we are experiencing in a developed world as far as the information sharing is going to happen. But it is going to happen by this, once the regulatory environment comes, they will be very choosy as far as forwarding the information. Of course, there will be an asymmetry in the initial stages, but bankers need to cater to the intelligent customer also. So the information asymmetry will also go out a big way. The third part I would see is that to achieving this speed and accuracy and the easiness is now only a certain area like liability, the payments and unsecured loans are the space where AI and all this analytics is coming and offer is coming in the market. What about the secured loans? There are bigger challenges to that extent, because the entire registration mechanism, the Companies Act, charge registration, all those process needs to change to accommodate it in a completely different manner. If that happens, the most important thing will happen is documents will become irrelevant and data will become prominent. The reason is documents have a problem today. Traditionally, all bankers were very happy with the documents. They will see by smell of the document you can make out whether it is a genuine document or a forged document. But today, you can make copies better than the original. The shippers who has issued bill of lading cannot identify the fraudulent instruments of same bill of lading coming to them. That is the environment. So the bankers' trust and the documents are going to go down. There comes the data. That is where the data and the data analytics will come, and the data will be driving the determining factor and the decision making from the bank. So to just end up this thing, I would feel that as far as the bankers are concerned and the fintech industry is concerned, the services to the bankers and their experience is going to happen in a marketplace. More asymmetry will be removed and it will be more and more standardized to that extent. That would be the expectation I have on the next 10 years journey. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Sunilji. I mean, very well spoken. I mean, chronologically, just like he has got some law graduate and his experience also very, very well theoretically and also sequentially it has been explained. Thank you, sir. So I would request Tejas also to add on to that.
No. I hope you guys heard him. Now, how do you get an artificial AI to replace this here? You can't, right? I think that's it.
Thank you. Having set the context on how the customer experience, and I would now request Kashinath. He is a very well experienced banker, more than 3 decades of experience in various business domains, not just technology, not just. He has got experience in marketing. He has got experience in operations. I do not know what else he don't have experience. So, with your experience and understanding, can you explain a little more on how this conversational AI is revolutionizing the customer experience in the coming days?
Hi, thanks Ajeesh for those kind words. The only not so kind was 3 decades of experience, so I'm not yet there. But thanks anyway for this introduction. The way I would look at it is, what is conversational AI going to do in the context of what Sunil mentioned and in the context of the BFSI space in general? You see, we have to understand 2-3 things. One is the growing user demographics. So today, India is the land of millennials, and with every passing, you say 5 years or a decade, the number of millennials is only going to increase, and the Generation Z is going to be the active user of various products and services. And what will also happen is, therefore, the entire expectation set of this customer who are digitally native, who are born with a mobile phone, the way they look at the world is completely different. Now we are in a state of flux. What do I mean by that? Is that, as Sunil rightly said, bankers love documents, so do insurance companies and XYZ. And now the love for documents and the smell of the document doesn't arise from some genetic disorder that they have. It's on account of the regulatory framework under which banking operates necessitates such kind of documents. I mean, let's be clear. I mean, we don't have some special genes built to ask for more documents than required. Okay, so that's point number one. So the generic designers of this entire thing has been the non-millennial segment. I mean, by and large, if you see today's banking process are broadly, have come into place by designers who are not part of the millennial generation. But it's a matter of time. Who's a millennial? I think anybody born after 85 is considered to be a millennial, right? So today they are what, about 35 odd years of work experience. In a matter of a few years, this crop of people are going to be the decision makers. It's just typically 40 to 50 is when people reach senior management to be able to influence critical decisions. So I'm saying from the supply side of digital products and services, you're going to see a huge shift. Amongst that is the conversational AI. I mean, a multiple shift in the way you will design products, because you are yourself natively, you are born with, you groomed yourself with the way of working digitally. So therefore, when you're designing a product, you would put all those elements into design. So I would tend to think for bankers, it appears to be a big effort, but I'm telling you in 5 years' time, it's not going to be a big effort for bankers. Believe me, Of course, there is a regulatory change that's going to happen. Along with that, the profile of the people who are going to handling banking, that's going to change. The technology, providers who are helping banks to run their operation, that's also going to change. So the entire surrounding things have to happen for the push towards, new forms of customer experience will naturally emerge, right? Because the things have to be ripe. In India, if you see, an analogy is, many things came together for the digitization to happen. I mean, it was the mobile phone. Coupled with that was availability of relatively low-cost internet. Third, availability of India stack in the form of Aadhaar, which Sunil mentioned. All these 4 or 5 things had to come together for the inflection point to happen and the threshold to be broken. Same thing is going to happen here in banking. In that context, in terms of conversational AI, I would tend to think it's a small piece of the entire equation. What is conversational AI? It is that today, all of us, we are all very conversant in working on WhatsApp. That is what is conversation. As opposed to, hi, how are you? Today we do the same thing in the WhatsApp, right? Through an interface, instead of picking up the phone or talking face to face. So the new generation is looking to be more familiar doing this. So the whole transition is, how do I use this framework to use it for various customer conversation initiative in the commercial sense? Okay. Now, obviously, on the other side, if you have a bank official or an insurance official sitting and answering this question, that's not a scalable model. So what do you need to do? You need to build an array of automated responses which will respond to the customer as though a human being is sitting. Now, that is what is conversational. I'm just trying to demystify the way I look at this thing. Now, what do you need to build conversational AI? Obviously, you need an interface, something like a WhatsApp or a chatbot or whatever you call it, right? Behind the scenes, what do you need? Behind the scene, you need some 3-4 kind of intelligence you need to build. What are those? One, you need to understand, you need to build an engine which understands natural language. I can ask, hey, hi, how are you, in 20 different ways, in 20 different languages. This fellow here, the machine here, has to understand what the customer intent is. So, in technical parlance, I understand it's called intent recognition, but basically it is this only, that samjho main kya bol raha hu types, simple. Second, it should translate that intent into a machine readable format. Those are the whole realm of APIs and various other forms of communication, microservices, etc., which will identify that this is the intent, okay, convert into a machine language, and that what is that machine language? It will tell that customer has asked a query about his, say, balance, or how can he break his FD, for example. So it has to understand this and then orchestrate to go to the relevant systems within the bank, go and fetch a response and come back, right? So this is the second key capability required to develop this whole conversational AI piece, right? To understand, to orchestrate, etc., in real time. So this is a very, very large capability required for the banks and various financial services and IT companies to do. The third big capability required is to come back and to be able to convert that machine language into a human understandable language the bot does. The fourth capability required is that, hey, look, it's like, I don't understand, say, Bengali that well. So I'm learning Bengali, I'm not fluent, I don't know many words. So therefore you need to have a mechanism, what I know I didn't know, and therefore figure out a way to know, what I did not know. So it's an auto-correction mechanism. Intelligence is something that we need to build so that the bot automatically, conversational AI automatically learns. I think I would tend to agree with Sunil as well as with Tejas that while these capabilities get built, there will be a transition period where people will find it inconvenient to use, and the other conventional channels will coexist. The case in point is that we have so much of development that has happened in these conversational AI. A replacement, the earlier replacement to this was the contact center or call centers that banks had. My understanding is that the number of calls in the call center cumulatively in the, in this whole space hasn't gone down significantly. Maybe the form factors have changed and stuff like that. Still there are thriving call centers, still that business is growing, okay? And therefore, it's not either or. You know, it's like even today as I speak, if you look at the channels, there is a physical branch bank that's also growing, and there is a electronic, banking channels like mobile and internet banking and so on and so forth. That's also growing. Both are growing. I think the real thing will be that we will be in a flux for a lot of time, and finally there will come a time, maybe at 10 years down the line, I'm not a Nostradamus to figure out, that maybe that horse cart moment will come when cars start taking over the horse cart. So that's the way I would like to see this.
Thank you, Kashinath sir. I mean, you have put it in a very simple, understandable manner. Not only that, I would say he just not only said what it is, but how part also, the technical side, how he is implementing a lot of, I think thousands of RPAs are being implemented in ICICI Bank is what I heard. So he's speaking from what is being done, not just what is going to come, but he knows what it is exactly, what are the challenges. So thank you, sir, it was great. And now moving on to, we have another great person who has, it is none other than Tejas sir, who has not only studied, but actually implemented in multiple banks, developed digital technologies, artificial intelligence, how it is being done, and how successful it has been. So, sir, I would request you to explain to us how this is going to give practically a return on investment on conversational AI. And if you could explain, give us some practical or live examples of where it has been implemented successfully, that will be great for us.
Hi. Thanks for turning up on a Friday morning, first of all. I'm not very loquacious with words. And Abiesh is obviously gracious to a fault. At the end of the day, it's about banking. At the end of the day, it's about cross-selling. It's at the end of the day, how do I sell you a loan, guys? I mean, that's where it has come down to. I don't know what will happen in 5 years, let alone 10 years. Yeah, I learned that to my peril. The idea is to make banking physical or digital very boring. And the idea is to not mystify it, but to demystify it, right? Conversational AI, artificial intelligence, data analytics, SaaS, Hadoop, cloud, platforms, smart, everything. These are the words, that makes us feel so smart about it. At the end of the day, it's my money. Am I able to use it the way I want to see it? That's point number one. Second is, hey, listen, I want to buy this house, I want a loan, or as, both Kashi and Sunil were saying, especially for the MSME sector, how do I do the documentation and make it very simple? It all comes down to that, guys. Please, let's demystify this. So to answer to Abiesh's point, it's all about, I'll try to make it as non-technical because I also don't know too many technical. I mean, it makes me look a little more smarter, but that's all there is to it. But how do you reduce the friction? It's as simple as that, right? Why do you have to go to a conversational AI is my first fundamental question. How do you reduce the friction between you and the organization that is supposed to be your bank? Simple as that. You want to do an, how do you say this? A simple thing as an address change or even a PAN update. You don't require, how do I say, any AI, for example, right? One of the things that obviously we learned as we move along, and least of me is not an expert. I just learn along the way. It's as simple as that. It's just that I work on the mistakes much more faster than most of the people. It's as simple as that. Because at the end of the day, it's the bank's money that you're spending. So coming back to the original point, it's about how do you reduce the friction. A step before that is how do you well establish your funnel. And by that, it's about mapping each and every steps And I'm just breaking it down to the last micro level, guys. So there is no overwhelming of information for you guys. When a customer starts a journey, let's take a case study of opening a savings account, right? 2 years back, 3 years back, when we introduced that in the market, it was a great revolution product. Now it's a commodity, right? Across the industry, across neobanks, across fintechs, especially with FedBank, right? You guys have partnered with a lot of banks. How do you start a customer journey? A savings account journey, whether you take an Aadhaar first, what is your AUA, KUA, does the OTP come on time, is the communication addressed, what is the risk matrix, right? Do you then do a video KYC? Video KYC, the best efficiency is about 45%. Anything else is overstating it. Outside of that, then how does the CKYC go? Now all of that, right? These are different technologies embedded into one platform, or that is the attempt. So without getting into names of for the software providers, there is one company which does A, second company which does B, the third company which does C. And I know it's an operational nightmare when the documentation finally comes, let's say, to the operations team for a 4I principle, right? And then you start engaging with the risk things. Now at this point of time, the AI or the chatbot or even a conversational AI, idea is, it is supposed to learn from the frictions, from the drop-off, from the funnel, right? And be available at the point of impact and not be there 24/7. It just has to be a small hovering thing. Have I been able to master it? No. Has most of the banks able to master it? No. Some of the companies in our Indian context, outside of BFSI, which I can relate to probably, at best is Amazon and Swiggy to some extent, because they learn from what you're doing and what is the question that you're likely to ask. That's conversational AI, right? The second point, and I think that is more important, is how much do you spend on that? And there is no clear answer, guys. Absolutely no clear answer. Do you keep on putting the tab? Sometimes it's very difficult to draw it back. If you implement your, let's say, your chatbot, your conversational AI, your artificial AI, to your main engine, your main wireframe, your main frames, and your main platforms, because then the cost of rolling it back is that much more. So the idea, at least over the next 2 years, where I see this, going, basis my discussions with a lot of experts, including folks like Kashi, Vijay, and Sunil, and everyone else, is what is the business case? If I'm spending 100 rupees on this, how many, again, to continue the same savings account example, how many accounts I'm getting, what is the drop-off, what is the funnel, and what is the customer retention? If you start breaking it down into this, that is point number one. Point number two is all the queries, right, which are written and unwritten. In again, non-technical language, a business decline or a technical decline, how well do you read this? Most of the times, as customers, all of us, we get, sorry, your transaction is denied. Okay, we know, but why, right? Now that is where your customer interaction, your AI, all of this comes into picture. So at the end of the day, how do I handle the customer and how do I make the machine work as to what I need to do? It's not about reducing the man-force, it's not about reducing, in fact, you'll require more smarter people to understand what a customer wants. And by that, you yourself become a customer. That is the long and short of it, because ROI will always play a very important part. And more importantly, you need to have just 1 or 2 bots. I've seen this at a lot of places. You have multiple bots because that is how the teams implement. That's not how it is. It's an organization implementation. What is it that you want and what is it supposed to be done? It cannot be at the whims and fancies of a product manager. That's the long. I'm just breaking it down to hopefully to the areas that you guys will be able to understand these are use cases. But that's all there is to it. I don't do too much of crystal gazing, Abiesh.
Thank you, Tejas sir. He's very humble. Though he says he don't know, you need to sit with him for half an hour and you will understand what is the depth of what he's saying. Within this maybe 5-6 minutes, what he has explained, I think we need a couple of hours to really understand. So thank you, sir. So moving to next question. Before that, we are the generation who have been, I do not know, we can say fortunate, but yes, we are alive fortunately. went through the pandemic. So I would like to ask Kashinath sir a question on how the COVID-19 has changed the expectations of the public on the customer experience and the digital especially.
See, there are two things that I would like to put here. See, human behaviors through history has changed basis some very strong trigger. And my insight is that there are two kinds of things that change behavior to the inflection point. One is, things which are compulsion based, and second, which are convenience based. Now, if you look at the COVID-19 pandemic, it was a compulsion based change of behavior, because you had, they call it TINA, there was no alternative, right? So customers changed, and even the suppliers of product, services, banking, blah, 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 everybody changed. They had to change because there was no option. So I think, as a result of that, the pivot that happened during the pandemic, a lot of new capabilities got created in the last couple of, if you look at everything is onlineized, whether it is, in a corporate banking space, huge amount of digitization banks have done, and customers have also gladly accepted that, in this period. Mostly on account of the fact that their own employees, their own business was at stake, and therefore that compulsion led to adoption. That's the same use case even in the, in the retail payment space. If you see the adoption of, a lot of apps really went up. That's the same in the education space. A lot of edtech companies have come up in the last 2.5 years. The delivery of online education as a sustainable model has emerged. So I think the pandemic infused a compulsion-led change. However, the traces it left behind was one of possibility. Now suddenly, people started to figure out, hey, look, you can effectively work without going to office, huh? Right? मतलब घर पे तो लोग ऐसे ही सोते हैं ना, मतलब काम कैसे करेंगे? This is something that all of us here, I'm sure, have worked pre-pandemic. It left a massive probability for all of us. And today, half the globe is working still from work from home, and then we are calling it hybrid and stuff like that. So what the pandemic has done, it is creatively given a new hope, a new possibility upon which a next set of innovation is happening. Having said that, what I'm observing is it's a mean reversal. We're seeing that while we created these competencies and capabilities to go to the next level, once the situation is restored, we also see certain reversals to the mean. As in, people are coming back to the old ways. Like, for example, schools have reopened. So if you see the edtech adoption has gone down. And it's bearing, you read the media news reports and stuff like that. A lot of edtechs are finding it difficult to sustain. The marketing costs are going up because of this. We also have seen in our observation that however much we want to keep up with the, go digital. So there has been both adoption as well as some people saying, "No, ab to aapka branch open hai, so why don't you come and start, take my documents." So I think both things are happening. I think net, the pandemic has been, I would say, in retrospect, notwithstanding the devastation it left, from the business perspective, it has left a wide possibility for us to iterate and develop the next normal.
Thank you, sir, again, putting it in a very practical and simple manner. One last question to Sunil, sir. How do we build an intelligent bank with AI capabilities from a bank's perspective? Can you quickly, we have got only a couple of minutes.
Looking at the clock ticking in front of me, I will make it very brief. Two ways it is seeing an intelligent banking from the bank's perspective. One is customer selection, customer monitoring, and offering the customer the right product of his choice. On the risk side, basically it is actually analyzing the risk. So what happened is that all the banks, even today, are faced with lots of systems, and many of the systems are not talking to each other and all. For example, I will tell you one corporate, just an example, don't take it as a fraudster example. What I'm saying is that the company is in Hong Kong, purchases the TV components from Japan, and then assembles it and exports to US. So this is what their credit proposal, bank knows the data, this is the transaction. But their operations department will not know what exactly the transactional cycle, and there the company gave a fraudulent bill. Exactly, I told earlier, you can't identify whether it is a fraudulent bill or not, saying that exports directly happen from the from Japan itself to US. So it's a very clear fraudulent transaction. The problem is bank's right hand doesn't know what is happening on the left hand. So this is what the biggest piece AI is going to address from that perspective. The data lake will pull out all this data from the various systems to that extent, and then banks have a cross-check AI run, and the scenarios can be developed that this can be connected. Then added with that, what are the external information available from the income tax side, whether from the regulatory side, and even from the custom side, what information, that is the external data, whatever is more and more external data is accessible for the banks, better would be the risk management to that extent. And the thirdly, definitely looking into the social network, they are using the social media from there, all these three are pulled into, that is where the banks are able to manage through the AI and the data analytics the problems, early spotting the problem. I don't say that there will not be any problems, but you can at least early spot. Rather than the lag indicator, AI helps us to do the lead indicator before the problem happens. That is one part. Looking at the same way from the customer, product and offering perspective also, the same thing can happen. We can look into what is the customer needs, what is happening from the social media, and all this data. That is what the CRM solution ultimately providing to the banks to suggest certain things. Always these suggestions may not be right, because the Google can actually predict, Google can suggest, Google can determine everything. But I don't think banks
are suffering and not able to capitalize the benefits of real conversational AI benefits. So I believe in the coming days, we will change the way in which banking itself. It is not just plugging some new technology into the existing system, but the entire stack of things need to modify. Only then we will be able to capitalize the real benefit of conversational AI with the new technologies, new vendors coming to the market, with the changing customer demands. I strongly feel things are pushing towards more of conversational AI, because we don't have time to visit the branches. We don't have time to wait for the call center agents. If the systems can replace to the maximum extent, I believe the intelligence of the system should increase, and it should be customizable as much as possible, with which I strongly feel the days ahead are the days of conversational AI disrupting the market and changing the face of banking. And thank you once again for all the panelists, for all your inputs, and the Synnex Group. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to share our views and inputs.
Thank you, Abiesh, for wonderfully summing it up. And ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for this wonderful panel. Mr. Kashinath Hariharan from ICICI, Sunilkumar ji from Federal Bank, Tejas Maniar ji from Fino Payments Bank, and Abiesh for wonderfully moderating from ESAF Small Finance Bank. Now, with the interest of time in mind, we open the floor to questions, but we will take only one question. So anybody having a question, please raise your hand. You will get the mic. Please introduce yourself, and please also introduce your organization. You can either direct the question to the entire panel, which I think the moderator can decide to whom it should go, or you can directly ask the question to any individual panel member. Any questions?
You can ask question without the AI also. It's conversation. AI, cut the AI part.
So I think, yeah, we have a question in the front. Can we have the mic, please?
Yeah, hi, I am Tushar from Rubik's Data Sciences. So my question to the panel is, so I've attended a lot of summits on AI. I mean, and we always talk about tools, latest intelligence and all. But I somehow feel that the conversation or discussion around data lakes gets kind of lagged behind, because that's what generates the intelligence. So what are the banks doing in building massive data lakes to ensure that what you mentioned in terms of intent recognition and all. What are the banks doing in terms of building massive data lakes so that intelligence works intelligently?
So I think banks are, if I may, yeah. So I think banks are looking at revamping the entire data architecture, but there are 2-3 big problems to solve. As Sunil mentioned, banks, the large banks especially, the old age banks, have legacy systems. When you have legacy systems, each of the systems have their respective data tables. They are all maintained in their own unique formats. Many a times the data concatenation is a big challenge, and therefore the the issue of data salience becomes a big piece. So data lake is one part of the problem. So I think I have seen that banks are investing in big ticket data lakes, and I think there are good conversation going on with the Googles of the world and IBMs or Oracle, and they're all good people who supply this data lake system. But there also it is a question of doing the right kind of plumbing, right? Number one. So this plumbing is a big thing. I mean, in technical parlance, they call it ETL scripts and all of that, writing so that you kind of plumb the data and get it into the data lake. That's just one part of the problem. But it's easy to drown in a data lake, because if you start dumping it, then you drown, and then again you are into the same problem you're having, like what this somebody said, no, water everywhere, not a drop to drink. So you'll have data everywhere, not a data to use, right? So therefore, the way forward for banks is to start, in my view, with the use cases, which is what Tejas very clearly articulated. Start with the use case. Understand what are you solving for whom and why, and by solving what gets, what laddu comes out for whom, for the customer, for the bank, and for the vendor, etc. That has to be very sharply defined. Once that is defined, then go back and build your plumbing and stuff like that. But oftentimes what happens is these big transformations of data lake end up into creating large lakes of data, but then you're unable to practically use anything. Again, the whole thing about ROI, all these kind of sad questions starts coming up. So that's the, we've also been having a lot of conversations with a lot of other banks globally, India, a lot of consulting companies in this field, and this is the broad take that we kind of get. I agree with you. It's a prime infrastructure if banks has to become data native, like an Amazon or a Google or a Netflix or things like that. The data lake infrastructure is inevitable. But more than that, because of the legacy system, we need to flip the thing about solving the use case first and then solving the data. And that's my take.
Thank you so much, sir. And thank you so much, all the panel members. I would ask the panel to kindly be here. And now I would like to call on stage Mr. Jasmeet Chhabra, Senior Vice President from Lentra, to kindly do the honors of felicitating this wonderful panel. Jasmeet ji, welcome to the stage. Thank you so much, panel members. Jasmeet ji, kindly join the panel for a group photograph with all the panels. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, a big round of applause for the first panel session of the day. Fantastic discussion. Mr. Kashinath Hariharan from ICICI, Mr. Sunilkumar from Federal Bank, Mr. Tejas Maniar from Fino Payments, and Mr. Abiesh from ESAF Small Finance for wonderfully moderating it. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you so much, panel members. Thank you so much, Jasmeet ji, for doing the honors.